I want you to start off today by thinking about the last time you really looked in the mirror. And I don't mean, just a passing glance as you're brushing your teeth and rushing out the door.
Right, a real look.
Yeah, a real prolonged, like entirely honest look. Because for a lot of us, there comes this moment, maybe it's in your 30s or your 40s or beyond, where you experience this really subtle, kind of unsettling disconnect.
Oh, absolutely. It's that realization that the reflection doesn't quite match the energy you feel inside.
Exactly. The person looking back at you, the texture of the skin, the hair volume, maybe the tired hollowing around the eyes, it just doesn't match the vitality you actually feel. There's this gap between your internal reality and your external reflection.
And society is very eager to offer tools to fix that gap, right?
Oh, yeah. The modern world offers a very specific and, frankly, a very aggressive set of tools. We're constantly told to mask it or, freeze it, fill it with synthetics, pull it tight.
But that's the whole issue. It's all artificial.
Right. But what if closing that gap didn't involve toxic chemicals
Yeah.
or artificial implants? What if the future of looking like you feel actually involved tricking your own body into healing itself?
Which fundamentally changes the entire conversation around aging. I mean, we are so accustomed to the quick fix, right? That cosmetic Band-Aid.
Yeah.
And because of that, we've completely bypassed the body's innate biological language. Like if you have a crumbling brick wall, slapping a fresh coat of paint or some duct tape over the cracks, I mean, it might look okay from across the street.
Right. From far away, it's fine.
Exactly. But structurally, it is still failing. So true regenerative medicine is about providing the actual raw materials to rebuild that brick and mortar from the ground up.
Okay, let's unpack this because today's deep dive into our source material turns the entire anti-aging and cosmetic industry completely upside down. We're looking at a really profound conversation featuring Dr. Cameron Chesnut on the Ultimate Human podcast, or show, I should say.
Yeah, and Dr. Chesnut is a fascinating figure.
He really is. He isn't just a facial plastic surgeon and a dermatologist. He is heavily entrenched in the world of biohacking and regenerative medicine.
Right. He bridges those two worlds perfectly.
Exactly. So our mission today is to explore this incredible intersection. We're going to look at the hidden dangers of modern cosmetic trends, the absolute cutting edge of regenerative science, and how physical recovery is deeply tied to mental frameworks of high performance.
What's fascinating here is that we are witnessing a massive paradigm shift in how high-level practitioners view the human body.
Yeah.
We're moving away from this era of synthetic cover-ups, and we're entering an era of cellular optimization. Like, we are talking about fixing the root cause of aging at the structural, microscopic level.
It's wild to think about.
It is. And to really understand that, we basically have to rethink almost everything we've ever been taught about cosmetic enhancement.
And it really is a complete rethinking. So we're going to start from the top of the head, literally, and explore the biological truth about hair loss. Then we'll look at the architecture of the skin itself, breaking down this massive misconception about collagen and elastin.
Which is huge, by the way.
Oh, it changes everything. And from there, we have to navigate the rather terrifying hidden epidemic of facial fillers. There's this psychological trap called perception drift that we'll get into.
That part is honestly a bit scary.
It really is. And finally, we'll look at how biohacking is fundamentally rewriting what it means to recover from physical trauma and how you can use those exact same tools to build like unshakable mental composure in your own daily life.
I think starting at the top of the head is the perfect entry point because before we can even discuss altering or, rejuvenating the face, we have to understand how the body actually regenerates native tissue.
Right.
We really have to understand the soil, so to speak.
I love that concept of the soil because the way we currently treat hair loss is honestly a bit barbaric when you look at the underlying science.
It's very rudimentary.
Yeah. One of the first things that jumped out at me from Dr. Chesnut's conversation is this crucial distinction. When we talk about hair loss, it usually isn't actually loss at first. It's thinning.
Right, and we need to define what a hair follicle actually is to understand why that happens. Because a follicle is not just a pore on your scalp that happens to, sprout a strand of dead protein.
It's way more complex than that.
Exactly. A hair follicle is a highly active, incredibly complex organ. It is a dense collection of stem cells. You have specific stem cells within that follicle whose sole job is to produce keratin.
And that's the structural protein, right?
Yes, the keratin is what gives the hair its physical shaft. And then sitting right alongside them are other stem cells called melanocytes.
And they do the color.
Exactly. They are responsible for producing pigment, which gives your hair its color.
So it's essentially this microscopic manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
And as we age, those factories don't necessarily just pack up and leave right away, do they?
No, they don't disappear. They undergo a biological process called cellular senescence.
Okay, what does that actually mean?
To put it simply, they go to sleep, they enter a state of dormancy. The biological signaling that normally tells them, hey, wake up, divide, produce keratin and pigment, it just shuts down.
Wow.
Yeah, the stem cells are still physically there in the scalp, but they are metabolically inactive.
That makes the traditional mainstream approach to hair loss seem incredibly blunt. Like, take something like topical minoxidil, which millions of people use every single day.
Right.
If the stem cells are literally asleep, what is rubbing a chemical on your scalp actually doing?
Well, minoxidil is primarily a vasodilator. Its main mechanism of action is to widen the blood vessels.
Okay, so it just pumps more blood.
Right. By doing so, it physically forces more localized blood flow to the scalp area, but it is a mechanical solution to a biological problem.
So it's a Band-Aid.
Pretty much. I mean, it might yield some single-digit percentage improvements by flooding the dormant area with blood and whatever nutrients happen to be in that blood, but it is not fundamentally changing the cellular environment.
It's not waking up the sleeping cells.
Exactly. It's not sending a targeted wake-up signal to those senescent stem cells.
And then you have the oral pharmaceuticals, things like finasteride. The deep dive into finasteride during this conversation was genuinely alarming.
It is a very serious medication.
It's prescribed constantly for male pattern baldness, but it's literally a central testosterone blocker. It's an endocrine disruptor that you are taking systemically just to save the hair on top of your head.
The trade-off is massive, and it's something many patients just aren't fully counseled on before they start taking it. Finasteride works by inhibiting an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase.
And that's the enzyme that converts testosterone into DHT, right?
Exactly, dihydrotestosterone. Now, DHT is implicated in shrinking hair follicles, but here is the critical issue that gets glossed over. Finasteride crosses the blood-brain barrier.
Wait, really?
Yes, it enters your central nervous system.
So you're taking a pill for your scalp, and it's actively altering the hormonal environment inside your brain.
It is altering the creation of crucial neurosteroids. Because DHT doesn't just act on hair follicles, it plays a highly significant role in neurological function, mood regulation, and libido.
That is terrifying.
It really is. The clinical data and the subjective reports discussed by Dr. Chesnut highlight a staggering amount of side effects for finasteride users. We're talking about profound mood numbness,
Wow.
a literal loss of volition or drive, and severe sexual dysfunction, both in arousal and performance for both men and women.
So you are chemically altering your brain chemistry, risking your baseline happiness just to hold on to some hair.
Basically, yes.
It just feels entirely counterproductive.
Yeah.
You might get a decent head of hair, but you lose your drive, your mood crashes, and your libido completely disappears. Like, what is the point of looking a few years younger if you feel absolutely miserable?
Right. It's a classic case of sacrificing the whole organism for a highly localized cosmetic outcome. And the crazy thing is, it completely ignores the structural reason why the hair is thinning in the first place.
Which brings us to a much more sophisticated biological framework that he talked about, the gravity theory.
Gravity theory is brilliant.
It really is. This completely changed how I look at baldness.
It's a great way to conceptualize what is happening at the anatomical level. Just think about the physical structure of the human head. The crown, the very top, experiences the absolute highest amount of gravitational pull and skin tension.
Makes sense.
Right. And over decades, that constant gravitational force, combined with the natural aging process, leads to a physical loss of the subcutaneous fat layer on the top of the scalp.
So the actual fat pad on your head just shrinks and thins out over time.
It slowly diminishes. And people think fat is just filler, but in the human body, fat is highly vascularized. It's the crucial microvascular cushioning that houses the entire blood supply for the hair follicles.
Oh, I see. So when you lose that fatty tissue, you are effectively suffocating the microvasculature.
Exactly. The blood vessels get physically compressed because the cushion is just gone. The follicles lose their nutrient supply.
And without nutrients and oxygen, they go to sleep.
Yes, those stem cells undergo that senescence we talked about. They miniaturize, the hair shafts get incredibly thin, and eventually the follicle goes dormant. It is an environmental failure of the scalp.
So if the problem is a loss of fat and blood supply, the biohack solution isn't a pharmaceutical testosterone blocker. It has to be regenerative.
Right.
And this is where Dr. Chesnut's approach is just wild. He is actually harvesting fat-based stem cells from the patient's own body to rebuild the soil of the scalp.
This is where regenerative medicine truly separates itself from traditional dermatology. He is utilizing something called adipose-derived stromal vascular fraction.
Okay, what does that actually mean?
Adipose simply means fat. So he harvests this from areas where stem cell density is naturally highest in the human body, typically around the belly button or the flanks.
We really need to clarify the harvesting process here. Because when a normal person hears taking fat, you immediately picture, like, standard liposuction.
Oh, for sure.
You picture a massive, aggressive cannula attached to a loud wall vacuum, forcefully sucking out thousands of cc's of fat for body contouring. But this is entirely different, isn't it?
It is a completely different universe of medical procedure.
Yeah.
This is not body contouring. This is a delicate, hyper-precise extraction using a microcannula.
And it's done by hand.
Entirely by hand, often under this local anesthesia. He is only taking tens of cc's of fat, so it leaves virtually no trace on the patient's body.
Wow.
And interestingly, he notes that he prefers patients who are relatively fit because the overall quality of the fat, specifically the concentration and health of those vital stem cells, is actually higher in metabolically healthy individuals.
That makes a lot of sense. So once he has those few dozen cc's of fat, the processing is where the real magic happens. He doesn't just inject raw fat straight into the scalp, right?
No. It goes through a highly customized centrifugation process. He dials in specific RPMs to separate the fat into macro, micro, and nanofats.
Let's break that down, because I didn't even realize fat came in different sizes.
That separation is vital because different structural sizes of fat serve entirely different biological purposes. Like, if a surgeon wants to provide structural volume, say rebuilding a sunken cheekbone, they will use macro or microfat.
Because it's still chunky enough to hold shape.
Exactly. Those clusters still have structural integrity. But if you want pure cellular regeneration without adding any bulk, you have to refine it down to nanofat.
So nanofat isn't really fat anymore in the traditional sense.
Right. At the nano level, the physical fat cells, the adipocytes, have largely been broken down. What you are left with is no longer volumizing. It is essentially a pure, concentrated serum of regenerative stem cells and parasites.
Parasites, what are those?
Parasites are incredibly powerful cells that wrap around the endothelial cells of capillaries. When they are introduced to a new, damaged area, their primary function is to stimulate angiogenesis.
Which is?
The creation of brand new blood vessels.
Oh, wow. So you are literally injecting the blueprint and the workforce to build new vascular highways.
That is a great way to put it. And then comes the injection technique itself, which requires the practitioner to really think three-dimensionally.
What do you mean by three-dimensionally?
Well, a lot of traditional clinics will take PRP, platelet-rich plasma or stem cells, and just inject them all the way down, hitting the bone of the skull.
But hair follicles don't live on the bone.
They don't. They live suspended in the subcutaneous fat layer. So if you inject the regenerative serum directly onto the periosteum, the bone, you completely miss the target.
So it does nothing.
Pretty much. You have to meticulously place these nanofat-derived stem cells back into that exact same specific subcutaneous plane on the scalp.
So you're rebuilding the cushion.
Yes. You are mechanically recushioning the scalp while simultaneously delivering a massive payload of growth factors and parasites. And that orchestrates the creation of new blood vessels, waking up those dormant hair follicles.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate for a second here. Let's say the soil is dead. The scalp is thinned out, it's tight, and the follicles are completely gone.
Okay.
We see people get physical hair transplants all the time. But based on what you're saying, doing a hair transplant into a dead scalp sounds like taking a healthy, vibrant plant from your back garden and just shoving it into the dry, cracked, barren dirt in your front yard. Doesn't the new transplanted hair just die too?
That is the exact trap of mechanical transplants when they are performed in isolation. And honestly, it is a major issue in the hair restoration industry.
I can imagine.
It's precisely why the regenerative approach must precede the mechanical approach. If a patient has a completely bald spot, that area has been devoid of a robust blood supply for a long time. It is often heavily fibrotic. It's essentially a vascular scar tissue.
Meaning there's no blood flow.
None. If you simply harvest healthy hair follicles from the back of the head, which, by the way, is a finite resource, you only have so many donor hairs.
Right, you can't just keep taking them forever.
Exactly. If you punch those into that avascular scar tissue on the top of the head, they will struggle to survive. The survival rate of the graft just plummets because there is no existing vascular infrastructure to support the massive metabolic demands of a newly transplanted organ.
So you have to prep the soil first. You basically have to fertilize the yard before you plant the seed.
You must optimize a recipient area before you do any physical transplantation. By using fat grafting, exosomes, and specific peptides months prior to a hair transplant, you force the body to revascularize that dead zone.
You build the plumbing first.
Yes, you build the vascular infrastructure first. Then, when you finally plant that precious finite hair graft, it immediately taps into a rich nutrient supply.
This entire concept of providing the body with the right substrates, like the right foundational materials,
Yeah.
it naturally carries over into the rest of aesthetics.
Oh, absolutely.
If fat is the vital soil for hair, what are the building blocks of youthful skin? Because I feel like the wellness industry is constantly screaming at us to just eat more collagen.
You have it everywhere.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's in every protein bar, every coffee creamer.
And yet, the edible collagen myth is perhaps one of the most pervasive misunderstandings in modern wellness and anti-aging today.
Really?
Yes, collagen is a structural protein. It is absolutely vital for skin integrity, but the biological mechanism of ingestion is widely misunderstood by the general public.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because during this conversation, they used the most brilliant analogy for this that completely clicked for me.
The novel analogy.
Yes, they described a protein as a novel. Think of a physical book. The chapters, paragraphs, and sentences are the complex folded structures of the protein.
Right.
And the individual amino acids are the individual letters printed on the page. So when you eat a scoop of collagen powder in your morning coffee, your body doesn't just absorb the novel whole.
Not agree.
It doesn't read the word collagen and transport it directly to your forehead to smooth out a wrinkle.
Right. The digestive system is a breakdown engine. It is designed to rip that novel apart. The stomach acid and digestive enzymes break the paragraphs into sentences, the sentences into words, and the words down to individual letters, the amino acids.
So those individual amino acids are then shipped off into the bloodstream.
They enter the amino acid pool in your blood, and they are used wherever the body's internal triage system deems most necessary.
Okay, so it might not go to the skin at all.
Exactly. They might go to repair a micro tear in your bicep from yesterday's workout. They might be used by your immune system to build natural killer cells, or they might go to repair your gut lining.
Wow.
Eating collagen does not mean you are depositing collagen directly into your skin.
You're just giving your body some raw materials and hoping it decides to use them for cosmetics.
And notably, collagen is an incomplete protein.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it is missing the essential amino acid tryptophan. So while it provides some useful building blocks like glycine and proline, it is not a magical, targeted anti-aging missile. It doesn't dictate where those blocks are used.
So if eating a tub of collagen isn't the magic bullet for anti-aging, what is? Because the discussion made a profound distinction between collagen and a different protein called elastin. And honestly, it completely shifted how I view skin health and aging.
It is the defining difference in regenerative aesthetics, and it's crucial to understand the mechanical properties of both. Let's look at collagen first.
Okay.
Collagen provides strength. It is the rebar in a concrete structure. It's rigid, it's structured, and it provides the foundational integrity of the tissue so it doesn't tear.
Okay, so it's the scaffolding.
Exactly. Elastin, on the other hand, does exactly what it sounds like. It provides recoil, bounce, and elasticity.
So when we look in the mirror and see aging skin, it's not that our skin is tearing apart because it lacks strength. We aren't just losing collagen. We are losing elasticity. The skin stretches when we smile or frown, gravity pulls it down over time, and it simply lacks the ability to snap back to its original position.
Elastin is described as a highly delicate flower compared to the relatively sturdy, resilient structure of collagen. Elastin is incredibly vulnerable to degradation.
What degrades it?
Well, it is destroyed by ultraviolet damage from the sun, and it's degraded by oxidative stress from our environment, our diet, and systemic inflammation.
So everyday life, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It is the first structural component to fail as we age. And here is the true core of the issue with traditional cosmetic treatments.
Okay.
If you simply injure the skin to stimulate healing, the body's default panning response is to produce pure collagen to patch the wound as fast as possible.
And pure collagen without elastin is just a scar.
Let that sink in. Pure collagen without elastin is a scar.
Wow. That makes so much sense when you think about it. Because cars are incredibly tough, right? They don't break
Yeah.
easily.
Yep.
They don't move well. They don't have any youthful bounce or flexibility.
If you look at natural youthful skin under a microscope, the collagen fibers run haphazardly in a complex, multi-directional matrix, and they are intricately interwoven with elastin fibers.
So it's like a web.
Right. That haphazard arrangement gives the skin dynamic strength and flexibility from every angle. But in a scar, which is a state of fibrosis, the collagen fibers run uniformly in one single direction.
This is stiff.
It's organized, it's rigid, it has zero elasticity and very little blood supply. Therefore, the real secret to actual anti-aging isn't just mindlessly stimulating massive amounts of collagen.
Preserving the elastin.
Yes, preserving and purposely stimulating the production of that delicate elastin.
And how do we actually do that? Like, how do we hack the body to make elastin instead of scar tissue? The conversation went deep into the concept of controlled injury.
Right.
If you injure the tissue, it signals a biological repair cascade. But the type of injury matters immensely. This is where we get into the massive debate between microneedling, derma rollers, and lasers. Let's start with derma rollers because you can buy them online for like 20 bucks.
Yeah, and you really shouldn't. A derma roller is essentially a small wheel covered in tiny needles that you roll back and forth across the face. Now, think about the physics of a wheel turning. As the wheel rolls, the needles enter the skin at an angle. They reach their deepest point in the tissue, and then as the wheel continues to turn, they exit the skin at an opposing angle.
It creates a tearing motion. It's a shearing force underneath the surface of the skin.
It creates an unpredictable, ragged, trench-like injury in the dermis. The body perceives that chaotic mechanical tear and rushes to patch it with rigid scar collagen.
That sounds awful. What about microneedling?
Microneedling is more sophisticated because it uses a motorized vertical stamping motion. The needles enter and exit at exactly 90 degrees, which minimizes that shear and tearing.
Better, but still not ideal.
Ultimately, both of these are purely mechanical injuries. Lasers, however, operate on a vastly different level of physical and biological sophistication.
The physics of the lasers discussed here honestly blew my mind. We aren't just burning the top layer of skin off like a blowtorch. We are targeting something called specific chromophores.
A chromophore is a target molecule within the tissue that absorbs a specific wavelength of light energy. Medical lasers can be tuned to incredibly specific wavelengths.
Give me an example.
Sure. If a patient has severe sun damage or age spots, the practitioner can tune the laser to specifically target melanin, the brown pigment. The laser energy passes harmlessly through the rest of the tissue and only destroys the melanin.
Oh, wow.
Or if they have rosacea or broken capillaries, they tune it to target its hemoglobin, the red blood cells. Or for overall structural rejuvenation and wrinkle reduction, they target water molecules within the skin tissue.
And when the laser hits that target, let's say the water in the tissue, it vaporizes it.
Yeah.
That's the ablative part. It's a precise micro-injury.
Right.
But the magic, the real regenerative power, seems to happen in the area immediately surrounding that vaporized zone.
That is referred to as the peripheral heat spread. The tissue directly adjacent to the vaporized zone isn't destroyed, but it is heated to a very specific hormetic stress level.
Hormetic stress, meaning a small amount of stress that makes the cell stronger rather than killing it.
Correct. That precise, controlled thermal injury triggers the surrounding cells. But because it's not a ragged mechanical tear, and because of the specific cellular signaling induced by the heat shock proteins, a skilled practitioner can manipulate the growth factor milieu.
So you can tell the body what to make.
Yes, you can prioritize the creation of elastin precursors, not just rush the production of rigid scar collagen. You are speaking the body's language.
You are hacking the healing cascade. And speaking of hacking the cascade, they heavily featured the use of peptides post-injury to turbocharge this process.
Peptides are fascinating. They are short chains of amino acids that act as highly specific signaling molecules in the body. When you create this sophisticated laser injury, your body initiates a massive inflammatory and regenerative response. Peptides can be used to optimize that response. For example, BPC 157.
Body protection compound.
Yes. It is a peptide originally derived from human gastric juices, and it is renowned in the biohacking space for accelerating wound healing and promoting angiogenesis, building those new blood vessels we talked about.
So by introducing DPC 157 after a laser treatment, you speed up recovery dramatically.
Exactly.
They also mentioned thymosin beta 4 and GHKQ, which is a copper peptide.
Copper is an essential mineral substrate for both collagen and elastin synthesis. So you provide the highly specific thermal laser injury to signal the need for repair.
Right.
And then you flood the systemic environment with the exact chemical blueprints and raw materials, the peptides and the copper needed to rebuild with youthful elasticity, rather than just patching the area with fibrotic scar tissue.
It is a totally systemic biological approach to aesthetics. It's working with the body's intelligence. But this brings us to a really dark corner of the cosmetic industry.
Uh-oh.
We have to talk about the uncanny valley. We have to talk about the epidemic of facial fillers. Because what we've discussed so far is regenerative. Fillers are something else entirely.
Complete.
We see it everywhere now, on social media, walking down the street, massively overfilled lips, excessively sharp, geometric jawlines, chipmunk cheeks, and it brings up a psychological phenomenon they called perception drift.
Perception drift is incredibly insidious because it hijacks our own neuroplasticity.
How so?
Let's look at it objectively. A patient goes into a clinic for a very minor volume correction, say a small amount of filler in the lips or just a touch around the eyes to hide a shadow.
Okay.
They go home, they look in the mirror, and they see a change. They paid a lot of money for a change. The practitioner provided a change so the brain registers different as better.
Right, and then they just get used to it.
Over the next few months, their brain recalibrates. That altered, slightly augmented state becomes their new visual baseline of normal.
Wow.
So when that 6-month mark hits and maybe a tiny fraction of the initial swelling has gone down, they feel deflated. They feel like they've lost volume, even if they currently have far more volume than their original natural baseline.
Just to go back, and they get another syringe.
Exactly. And over years, this compounding effect distorts their face dramatically.
It sounds exactly like turning up the volume on your headphones.
That's a perfect analogy.
At first you put them on, it's really loud. But then your ears adapt, you get used to it, and it feels normal. Then the good song comes on, so you turn it up a little more. And a little more.
Right.
Eventually, you're practically deafening yourself. But to you, it just sounds like a normal, enjoyable volume.
Neat.
Meanwhile, everyone else in the room can hear your music bleeding out of the headphones from 10 feet away.
Because they have an objective baseline.
Exactly. So what does this all mean for the patient? Are they just trapped? Because perception drift explains why the patient doesn't see the distortion, but why does it look so profoundly alien to the rest of us?
That connects directly to the evolutionary neuroscience of facial recognition.
Oh, this part is so cool.
Our brains are not just casually observing faces the way we observe a tree or a car. We have deep, primal neurological hardware dedicated entirely to analyzing human facial features.
Because it's a survival thing.
Yes. Deep within the brain, the amygdala, which processes emotion and threat detection, and the fusiform gyrus, which is highly specialized for facial recognition, are working in hyperdrive whenever we look at another human.
We are hardwired to look for evolutionary survival cues. We are scanning for emotions, for subtle signs of fertility, for signs of physical fitness and genetic health.
And because we hyper-focus on specific areas to gather that data, primarily the complex musculature around the eyes and the lips, our neurological calipers are incredibly precise.
We can spot tiny changes.
We can instantly detect a 1 millimeter deviation in the area around the eyes or the mouth. Dr. Chesnut points out that if you ask someone to draw a human ear from memory, they usually can't do it accurately because we don't study ears for survival cues.
That's so true.
But we study eyes and lips constantly.
So when someone injects a synthetic gel filler and alters those highly sensitive contours by even a fraction of a millimeter, the patient's perception drift blinds them to it. But the rest of society's amygdala instantly flags it.
It registers as non-human, or at least non-natural. The brain recognizes that the geometry is wrong. That is the essence of the uncanny valley. It creates a subtle, instinctual feeling of unease in the observer.
But the aesthetic industry tells people that these fillers are temporary. You hear it all the time. Oh, it's just hyaluronic acid. It lasts 6 to 12 months, and then your body naturally dissolves it.
Yeah, that is a huge misconception.
This conversation completely shattered that idea. It is a longevity myth based on a loophole in FDA testing.
The regulatory background here is critical for anyone considering these procedures.
Okay, break down for us.
When the FDA initially tested these hyaluronic acid or HA fillers for approval, they measured their efficacy based on a very specific clinical criterion.
Which was?
How long did the filler continue to correct the volume deficit? They track the patients until the visible cosmetic volumizing effect diminished, say, around the 6 to 12-month mark. At that point, the trial concludes that the filler lasts for that duration.
But stopping correcting volume is not the same thing as physically leaving the body.
That is the crucial distinction. Just because the gel has flattened out or integrated or is no longer providing the cosmetic lift you paid for does not mean the physical substance has been metabolized and excreted by your kidneys.
So where does it go?
MRI studies now definitively show that these are semi-permanent to permanent implants. They remain in the facial tissue for years, sometimes decades.
And let's look at the biological reality of what these HA fillers actually are.
Yeah.
Because, yes, hyaluronic acid is a naturally occurring substance in the human body. We have native HA in our skin, our joints, our eyes.
Right.
So clinics sell it as natural. But the filler inside that syringe is not the same as your native HA, is it?
Not at all. If a practitioner injected pure, natural, liquid hyaluronic acid into your face, your body's native enzymes, hyaluronidase, would break it down and clear it out within 24 to 48 hours.
Wow, that fast.
Yes. To make the filler last as an implant for months or years, the pharmaceutical manufacturers have to synthetically alter it.
How do they do that?
They use chemical processes to cross-link the HA molecules. They bind them together with chemical agents to create a dense, proprietary gel matrix that is highly resistant to the body's natural enzymatic degradation.
It's synthetic cross-linking. And this creates two massive long-term problems that patients are almost never warned about. The first is migration. We inject this heavy cross-linked gel into the face, expecting it to stay put like a piece of bone.
But it's not anchored to bone. It's often injected into the muscle layer or the subcutaneous fat. And facial anatomy is unique. Our facial muscles are free-floating.
What does that mean?
They are constantly moving, contracting, pulling, and stretching every single time we speak, chew, smile, or express any emotion.
So it's like a massage constantly pushing on the filler.
Exactly. Over years, that constant repetitive muscular milking action physically pushes the permanent gel away from the original injection site.
It migrates through the tissue.
It migrates, often settling in dependent areas, creating heaviness, jowls, or puffiness in areas that completely distort the natural anatomy.
You literally have migrating face jelly. That is terrifying.
Yeah.
And the second major problem is the systemic immune response.
Those are the big one.
Because it's a cross-linked, semi-foreign body that attracts massive amounts of water, it just sits in the tissue acting like a sponge. They gave examples of patients who had filler injected 8 years ago, never had a problem, and then suddenly woke up one morning with their face massively swollen and throbbing.
Right.
Why? Because they got a routine teeth cleaning.
Or they received a vaccine. Or they simply caught a heavy, common cold.
That's insane.
Any biological event that heavily upregulates the systemic immune system can trigger a severe reaction. The immune system is suddenly on high alert, circulating throughout the body looking for threats.
And it spots the filler.
Yes. It encounters this cross-linked, unnatural HA gel sitting in the cheek or the lip, which has likely formed a microscopic biofilm over the years.
Oh, gross.
The highly active immune system recognizes it as a foreign invader and attacks it, leading to sudden, delayed onset inflammation, severe tenderness, and swelling years after the initial injection.
So when a patient realizes they have migrated filler or their face swells up, what is the fix? The industry's answer is almost always, oh, if you don't like it or if it migrates, we can just dissolve it.
Right, the magic eraser.
They inject an enzyme called hyaluronidase. It's sold as this magic eraser, just melt the mistake away and start fresh. But Dr. Chesnut views this as a massive, dangerous fallacy.
It is a deeply flawed premise that is damaging a lot of faces. Hyaluronidase is an enzyme that breaks down hyaluronic acid. The fundamental problem is that it is not a smart enzyme.
Meaning it doesn't know what to target.
It does not differentiate between the synthetic, chemically cross-linked HA filler and your body's native, natural hyaluronic acid.
So it's indiscriminate carpet bombing.
Exactly. When you flood the delicate facial tissue with this exogenous dissolver, you are undoubtedly melting away some of the synthetic gel. But you are simultaneously and aggressively degrading the patient's natural tissue matrix.
Oh, no.
You are destroying their native hydration, their native structural support, and the very environment that houses their stem cells.
That is heartbreaking.
Dr. Chesnut notes that he frequently sees profound qualitative changes in the tissue of patients who have been repeatedly injected with dissolver. The tissue becomes permanently compromised, dehydrated, and deflated.
The magic eraser is actually dissolving your natural face.
Yes.
And because dissolving is so destructive, That leaves physical surgical removal as the only true fix for migrated filler. He mentioned that he rarely performs a facial surgery now, like a facelift, where he isn't spending significant painstaking time manually hunting down and physically cutting out old migrated filler from the patient's muscle and fascia.
It's become a massive part of his surgical practice.
We've replaced natural biology with synthetic quick fixes, and the long-term consequences are literally piling up under the skin.
Which logically brings us to the surgical approach itself. Because fillers carry so many long-term, unpredictable risks, actual surgical intervention, when necessary to physically remove excess skin and reposition native fat and muscle, is often safer and far more effective long-term.
But we have to acknowledge that surgery is, by its very definition, a massive physical trauma to the human organism.
Huge trauma.
And this is where the conversation takes a massive pivot from aesthetics into hardcore performance and longevity. How do we mitigate the massive trauma of surgery? The biohacked operating room.
This part is fascinating.
This was absolutely riveting, starting not with the patient, but with the surgeon.
Right. It requires a fundamental shift in how we view the medical practitioner. Dr. Chesnut doesn't view himself simply as a mechanic fixing a machine on an assembly line.
Right.
He views himself as a high-performance athlete stepping into an arena. To execute an 8-hour facial reconstruction at the highest possible level of precision requires an unparalleled state of focus, which we refer to as a flow state.
And you don't just accidentally fall into an 8-hour flow state while drinking a cup of coffee. The preparation is meticulous.
It really is.
Let's break down his morning routine before big surgery, because it is essentially a masterclass in neurooptimization that anyone can learn from. He starts his morning in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber.
Hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or HBOT, involves breathing pure oxygen in a pressurized environment. Let's look at the physics and biology of why this works.
Okay.
Under normal atmospheric pressure, oxygen is carried almost exclusively by your red blood cells. But when you increase the pressure Boyle's law, you actually dissolve the oxygen directly into the blood plasma, the liquid part of the blood.
So the oxygen can reach places it normally couldn't.
Exactly. It crosses the blood-brain barrier much more efficiently, hyperoxygenating the brain tissue.
Wow.
This massive influx of oxygen reduces any baseline neuroinflammation, it increases mitochondrial ATP production in the brain cells, and it chemically primes the brain for intense, sustained cognitive endurance.
Then he moves out of the chamber and goes into the physical preparation.
Yeah.
And he does something incredibly specific. He doesn't just go for a run on a treadmill or lift some weights.
No.
He performs asymmetric bilateral exercises.
This is a brilliant neurological hack. Asymmetric bilateral movements, where your left and right limbs are performing different, complex, uncoupled actions simultaneously, force the two hemispheres of the brain to communicate rapidly.
Okay, like rubbing your stomach and patting your head, but extreme.
Exactly. It actively fires and strengthens the corpus callosum, which is the thick band of nerve fibers connecting the left and right hemispheres.
He is literally warming up the bridge in his brain. But why does a surgeon need that bridge so active?
Because the cognitive demands of a complex surgery are uniquely split. He has to hold a highly complex three-dimensional spatial map of the patient's internal facial anatomy in one hemisphere, while simultaneously executing hyper-precise technical fine motor movements with his hands using the other hemisphere.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Firing the corpus callosum ensures those two distinct neural networks are communicating seamlessly before he even picks up a scalpel.
And then comes the psychological preparation. Visualization.
Mm-hmm.
But they made a profound distinction here, drawing heavily from sports psychology. He does not visualize the process of the surgery.
No, he doesn't.
He visualizes the outcome.
This is a critical nuance for any high performer, whether you're a surgeon, a CEO, or an athlete. If you spend your time rigidly visualizing the step-by-step journey, the exact angle of the first incision, the precise sequence of events, you are programming a highly specific, fragile script into your nervous system.
Why is that fragile?
The danger is that surgery, just like life, is inherently unpredictable. Novel problems arise. Anatomy presents unforeseen variations.
So if you visualized a perfect linear process and then something goes wrong on step 3, your script is broken, panic sets in.
Precisely. The novelty triggers an immediate sympathetic stress response because reality no longer matches the visualized map. Your heart rate spikes, your focus narrows, you lose flow.
And when you're a surgeon, you can't afford to lose flow.
Exactly. However, if you rigorously visualize the outcome, the perfectly rejuvenated, balanced face at the end of the procedure, You are programming your nervous system for the final destination.
Right.
When reality inevitably deviates during the process, you don't panic. Your brain simply accesses its extensive training and fluidly problem solves a new route to that fixed destination. You remain adaptable.
That is an incredible mental framework that applies to literally any stressful project.
Absolutely.
Now, let's shift to the patient experience in this biohacked operating room, because this completely challenged everything I thought I knew about surgery.
It's wild.
Opioid-free anesthesia.
Wait.
No heavy painkillers after a facelift. I have to ask, is the biohacking actually replacing the morphine, or are we just asking patients to tough it out and suffer for the sake of some wellness ideal?
It is absolutely not about toughing it out or enduring unnecessary pain. It is about deeply understanding the severe hidden costs of the traditional medical model. The standard of care for major surgery is general anesthesia paired with heavy systemic opioids like fentanyl or oxycodone. But we now have robust, undeniable literature showing that repeated bouts of general anesthesia, particularly in older demographics, are linked to significant neurocognitive decline.
It's not just a deep sleep. You are putting the brain into a profound chemical coma.
Yes, and the recovery from that chemical coma is not trivial. It can lower IQ scores for months, induce severe brain fog, and potentially accelerate the onset of neurodegenerative diseases like dementia.
That is a massive hidden cost.
Dr. Chesnut's philosophy is highly logical. Why would I subject a patient to a procedure designed to reduce their biological age cosmetically if I am simultaneously blunting their neurocognitive function and chemically aging their brain?
Wow. Yeah. It's entirely counterproductive to longevity.
Exactly.
So the biohacked alternative replaces the chemical coma with targeted regional blocks. He relies on local anesthesia to numb the tissue, combined with 72-hour-long acting nerve blocks. He is physically turning off the pain signal at the nerve root for the first 3 days, which is when post-operative pain is at its absolute peak.
He marries that pharmacological precision with the neurological manipulation. While the patient is physically numbed via the nerve blocks, they are not unconscious.
They're awake.
Yes, but instead they are lying on a specialized sound bed that utilizes vibroacoustics and specific auditory frequencies to induce delta and theta brainwave states.
Delta and theta waves are the brain states associated with deep restorative sleep and deep meditation, right?
Exactly. So instead of a neurotoxic chemical coma, the patient is guided into a deeply relaxed, naturally induced trance state. They are comfortable, their pain is blocked at the local nerve level, and their brain is protected.
That sounds amazing.
Furthermore, by completely avoiding systemic opioids, you avoid the massive, paralyzing disruptions to the gut microbiome and bowel function that inevitably accompany narcotic painkillers.
Oh, true.
The physical recovery is faster, cleaner, and less toxic from day one.
And that recovery is further turbocharged the second the surgery ends. We get back into the biohacking modalities. They talk extensively about PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic field therapy.
PEMF is incredible.
Now, I've heard of PEMF for bone healing, but how is it working on soft tissue trauma after a massive surgery?
To truly understand how PEMF works, we have to zoom all the way in and look at the cellular level. Every cell in your body has a membrane, and that membrane holds an electrical charge voltage.
Okay.
When a cell undergoes severe surgical trauma, when it is physically cut, stretched, or exposed to air, it goes into shock, becomes highly inflamed, and crucially, the electrical polarization of its cellular membrane becomes disrupted. The voltage drops.
The battery of the cell is basically drained and malfunctioning.
A disrupted, depolarized cell membrane is a massive metabolic problem because the membrane governs the ion channels. It dictates what goes in and out of the cell. You could flood the patient's bloodstream with the most incredible, expensive, post-operative IV nutrients high dose. Vitamin C for collagen synthesis, a glutathione for detoxification, NAD for mitochondrial energy. But if the cell membranes at the actual injury site are shocked and depolarized, those cells simply cannot open their channels to uptake the nutrients.
The fuel is in the blood, but the cell's intake valves are jammed shut.
Precisely.
So the PEMF repolarizes the membrane.
Exactly. The low-gas electromagnetic pulses from the PEMF mat physically pass through the tissue and repolarize the cell membranes, restoring their healthy electrical charge.
That's genius.
The cell essentially wakes up from its trauma-induced shock, the ion channels open, and it can actively utilize all that oxygen and IV nutrition to rapidly rebuild the extracellular matrix and clear out the edema or swelling.
That is true cellular optimization. It's providing the precise electrical environment for healing.
Exactly.
It's so logically sound when you break it down to the cellular physics like that.
Mm-hmm.
But managing pain and recovery physically is only half the battle. As we saw with the surgeon's preparation, the mental state dictates the physical reality. How does a regular person, someone listening to this deep dive right now who isn't a surgeon, train that kind of unshakable mental composure in their daily life without going to an operating room?
This is a great question.
This brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the mental engine and the brutal reality of the cold plunge.
The cold plunge has become incredibly trendy on social media, but this conversation strips away the hype and focuses on the profound neurological and metabolic training it actually provides.
Right. It's not just for showing off on Instagram.
No, cold exposure is not just for physical recovery from a tough workout to reduce inflammation. It is a literal gym for your autonomic nervous system.
Let's look at the physiological breakdown because there is a very specific reflex at play here. When you submerge yourself in freezing water, the key isn't just getting your body in, it's actually getting your face wet.
Yes, specifically submerging the area around the nose and the eyes. This triggers the trigeminocardiac reflex, which is commonly known as the mammalian dive reflex.
Okay, what does that do?
It is a deeply ingrained evolutionary survival mechanism present in all mammals. When the cold water hits the specific receptors on the face, it severely shocks cranial nerve 5, the trigeminal nerve.
And then what?
This nerve instantly sends a high-priority emergency signal directly to cranial nerve 10, the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is the master controller of your parasympathetic nervous system.
The parasympathetic system is the rest and digest system. It's the brakes on the nervous system.
Precisely. The vagus nerve immediately slams on the brakes. It profoundly slows down the heart rate, alters your breathing patterns, and shunts blood flow away from the extremities and toward the vital organs in the core.
Wow.
It's the body's way of conserving oxygen and metabolic energy during an unexpected plunge into freezing water.
And it triggers massive metabolic shifts as well. They described a fascinating experiment where they wore a continuous glucose monitor, a CGM, during contrast therapy, alternating between a brutally hot sauna and the freezing cold plunge.
The CGM data revealed what they called a sawtooth effect, and it illustrates just how powerful these extreme temperature shifts are.
Explain this sawtooth effect.
When the subject is sitting in the hot sauna, the intense heat stress causes a slow, steady rise in insulin resistance. The body is stressed, cortisol goes up, and glucose remains elevated in the bloodstream.
Okay, so the line goes up slowly.
But the moment they step out of the heat and plunge into the cold water, the graph shows a sheer cliff drop, a sawtooth pattern.
The cold violently upregulates insulin sensitivity.
Yes. The body instantly demands massive amounts of energy to generate heat through shivering and non-shivering thermogenesis to survive the cold shock.
So it pulls the glucose out of the blood.
Exactly. The cells become hypersensitive to insulin, pulling glucose out of the blood incredibly rapidly to fuel that heat production. It is a profound systemic metabolic reset.
But beyond the metabolism, the true lasting value of the cold plunge lies in the psychological training, the composure muscle. I loved this part. They brought in a fascinating anecdote about Juliana Pena, a former UFC bantamweight champion, and they referenced Dana White's overarching philosophy on elite fighters.
Right. Dana White said that the fundamental difference between a good fighter and a great championship fighter comes down to one single word: composure.
Composure under extreme primal duress.
In a fight, the moment you get hit hard, the moment you lose your temper, the moment you allow the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight panic response, to completely hijack your cognitive function, you lose your strategy.
Right.
You lose your technique, you react rather than respond, and you lose the fight.
And stepping into a 39-degree tub of water is a daily controlled simulation of that exact primal panic.
It really is.
The moment you get in, your body is screaming at you that you are dying. Every single primal instinct in your DNA is telling you to thrash, gasp, and escape immediately.
By consciously choosing to stay in that water And actively using your breath to force your parasympathetic nervous system to override the sympathetic panic, you are physically strengthening the neural pathways of composure.
You're training your brain.
You are actively training a specific region of the brain called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, which is associated with willpower and the capacity to do things you do not want to do.
You are teaching your brain in a highly controlled environment that you can experience extreme discomfort and panic and still remain entirely in control of your actions and your breath.
Yes.
And the beauty of this is the sheer relatability. You don't have to be a UFC champion defending a title in an octagon, and you don't have to be an elite surgeon operating on a human face for 8 hours.
No, not all.
You might just be a parent trying not to completely lose your temper with a screaming toddler who just threw oatmeal on the wall.
Yes.
Or you might be dealing with a wildly stressful email from your boss that makes your heart pound. That cold water trains the exact same neurological muscle you need to stay calm and effective in those everyday moments.
If we pull back and connect all of this to the bigger picture, this is where every single thread we've discussed today converges.
Right?
Whether we are talking about regenerating the fatty soil of the scalp for hair growth, precisely preserving the delicate elastin in our skin with lasers, avoiding the synthetic trap of migrating fillers, or optimizing surgical recovery with PEMF and delta waves.
It all connects.
It all points to a single unifying philosophy of health. True anti-aging, true longevity, and true health optimization isn't about slapping on a synthetic patch. It's not about blindly enduring physical trauma or outsourcing your healing to a pharmaceutical band-aid that blunts your brain function.
It's about deeply understanding the body's innate, incredibly complex regenerative language.
It is about providing the precise biological, chemical, and mental environment for your body to thrive on its own terms. You give the body the raw substrates, you provide the correct signaling, and you get out of the way.
Which brings us to the core concept from Dr. Chesnut's conversation. What it actually means to be the ultimate human.
Right.
It isn't just about looking young. It requires identifying your core mission, first knowing what you actually value and want to achieve in life. Then it's doing the brutal daily grind to achieve it.
Yes.
But crucially, it requires optimizing your biology and your mental state along the way so that when you finally reach your destination, you actually have the physical and cognitive capacity to enjoy it.
It's a completely holistic view of high performance. You cannot separate the cosmetic from the biological or the physical recovery from the mental composure. They are inextricably linked systems.
We've covered an immense amount of ground today, and I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We talked a lot today about perception drift when it comes to facial fillers, how slowly adapting to an artificial subtle change can completely blind us to how distorted our reality has become. I want you to think about where else perception drift is happening in your life right now. Is it in your daily stress levels, your relationships, your daily energy and brain fog?
That's a powerful question.
Have you just slowly gotten used to a new normal that is actually draining you simply because the change happened a little bit at a time, day by day? Take a real prolonged look in the mirror, not just at the texture of your skin, but at the reality of your life, and ask yourself, is it time to dissolve the synthetic filler and get back to your true optimized baseline?
That is the real challenging work of optimization, recognizing the drift and having the courage to correct it.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Keep seeking those aha moments, keep questioning the quick fixes, and we will see you on the next one.